I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we're a week removed from the EU Parliament elections, and it looks like, from what you're telling me before we did this video, it looks like the Remainers on both the Corbyn camp, the Labour, and the Tories, the Conservatives, have learned absolutely nothing from the Brexit Party massive victory that happened last week. It looks like they're digging in. They're digging in with the Remain agenda. And from what you were telling me before we did this video, it looks like that now they're kind of pulling the curtain, and it's being revealed that they're not, making excuses for let's take a look at a second referendum, or let's add this to a withdrawal agreement, let's negotiate that. It seems like they're pretty intent on just admitting, look, guys, stop Brexit at all costs. We don't care. We want to stay in the EU. Am I saying it correctly, Alexander? Am I summing it up?
You're summing it up absolutely perfectly, Alex. And if I may say, I am myself, frankly, astonished about this, because the Remainers, the political establishment in Britain, seems to be prepared to torch the entire British political system and the two major parties and the internal stability of Britain, and to create massive sense of grievance and disaffection across England and Wales out of a desire to keep Britain in the EU, regardless of the referendum result, which is now, I think, beginning to develop a kind of fanatical tendency. Now, can I just talk about what's going on in the two major parties, because that's the crucible of this battle now. I mean, we no longer have debates inside the House of Commons. That's over for the moment. We have instead a battle going on within the Conservative Party and a battle going on inside the Labour Party. What is happening in the Conservative Party is that the absolute clear-cut front-runners, especially if the vote to choose the Conservative leader, who should be, according to the constitutional precedent, the British Prime Minister, because the Conservatives are the biggest party in the House of Commons, the front-runners are quite clearly Boris Johnson and Dominic Raab. Now, Boris Johnson and Dominic Raab, whatever you may think of them as people, have said very, very clearly that Britain will leave the European Union on the 31st of October 2019, as was agreed a few weeks ago, and that it will leave whether there is a deal or not. Now, that creates the real possibility that Britain will leave on the 31st of October without a deal. Now, the Remainers in the Conservative Party, who have seen how their party has been completely wiped out across England and Wales by the rise of the Brexit Party, and who are very well aware of how angry the Conservative electorate is about the fact that Brexit hasn't yet happened. These Remainers are now saying that if a Conservative Party leader, say it's Boris Johnson or Dominic Raab, becomes leader and is prepared to go ahead with a no-deal Brexit in order to meet this deadline on the 31st of October, then they are prepared to vote against their government in the House of Commons on a vote of confidence in order to bring it down. Now, people who have said that include Philip Hammond, who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Britain's finance minister, and who has made it perfectly clear that he is prepared to destroy both the Conservative government and indeed the Conservative Party in order to stop a no-deal Brexit. And when they talk about stopping a no-deal Brexit, it needs to be understood very clearly that what they really mean is that they want to stop Brexit entirely, because as Theresa May's deal, which is the only deal on the table, has been conclusively rejected by the House of Commons, the only option that they're prepared to put up is that there should be a complete renegotiation from the start, And the person they're championing, who is this alternative, this cabinet minister, Michael Gove, is talking about seeking a further extension beyond the 31st of October. Now, a further extension means, in effect, no Brexit at all. So that's the Conservative Party. The Conservative Remainers are prepared to destroy their own party and bring down their own government in order to prevent Brexit happening. That is, I find that an astonishing situation. If we look at the Labour Party, which also did badly in the European elections, we've seen the same thing happen. We have enormous pressure on Jeremy Corbyn coming from the Remainers within the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, to back a second referendum and to commit in backing that second referendum, that if that second referendum happens, Labour will support Remain. So in effect, they're trying to force Jeremy Corbyn to commit to supporting Remain. In other words, to keeping Britain in the European Union. And they're doing this on the basis that the Labour Party lost support both to Remain-minded voters and to Leave-minded voters in the European elections, ignoring the fact that by far the biggest swings against the Labour Party actually happened in the industrial Leave voting areas, which are the Labour Party's historic heartland. So both the Remainers in the Labour Party and the Remainers in the Conservative Party, in other words, the British establishment, are prepared to torch their own parties, torch the political system, destabilise the country, create enormous sense of anger and grievance across England and Wales, because they are determined at any and all cost to keep Britain in the European Union. I would never have believed it, but that is what is happening.
Well, the masks are off, and now I think we really do know where the loyalties of these establishment government officials and these ministers, where they lie. And they obviously lie with Brussels. What would bring a representative of the British people, a minister in the parliament, a member of the government, someone who was voted in by constituents, what would bring that person to go against the people that voted for them, to go against their country, to go against the wish of the people, and side with a foreign entity in Brussels? I mean, what is the motivation that they're willing to burn it all down, to burn the whole country down in order to appease these technocrats and these bureaucrats hundreds of miles away?
I think partly it is ideology. I think that there is a sense that, this is part of the neoliberal centrist order that we are part of and which we are defending because we are its beneficiaries, and we will protect that to the extent that we can.
What about the ideology of country, Alexander? The ideology of where you're from.
Let me come to that, because ideology is only a part of it. Though I should say there are some very bizarre and very fanatical pro-EU people out there whose I find very difficult to understand. But ideology is certainly an issue for some of them. I have to say that I think material interest is another very, very big part of all of this, because these are people who've done extremely well out of the present system, and they are terrified of losing the material privileges that come with that. And I'm sure that they're calculating to themselves, Britain remains in the European Union, we will be looked after, we will be all right, we will continue to be on the financial, the financial and material benefits that come from all of that. And it should be stressed not just from the EU institutions, but also from the business community, the British business community, the CBI, many parts of which support keeping Britain in the EU. And as I said, they are absolutely horrified at the idea that they will lose the financial and economic privileges that go with it. So I'm sorry to say this, I'm sorry to be so crude about this, but I think when you look at people behaving in this extraordinary fashion, you have to say to yourself, it comes down in the end to hard cash. It always does.
My God, it's astonishing.
Absolutely. I mean, I would never have believed it. I never imagined we would be in such a situation in England, in Britain. I mean, I always thought that whatever disagreements I may have had with the political class in Britain, ultimately they would not go to these lengths, as I said, jeopardizing the stability of their own country. If I may say, there was an extraordinary article by a man called Philip Stevens, who is very much somebody who, a journalist, but a very high-powered journalist in Britain. He writes for the Financial Times, and I think he very accurately embodies the mood, the attitudes of these people, and the contempt they have, by the way, because that's another factor, for the people outside the charmed circle in London, where this establishment, these elites operate, in which he said, you know, if Brexit is called off, what will Farage and his people do? All they can do is blockade the Channel Tunnel as the domestic debate moves on to really important things like the health service, police numbers, and all the rest. And the reality is that the Brexit Party and Nigel Farage can and could do much more if they start winning seats in Parliament, which they're very likely to start doing next week, by the way, where there's a parliamentary by-election. But it shows to me both the mindset of these people and the extraordinary contempt they have for their own citizens.
Well, Farage actually made that warning. He says, if we don't get Brexit, believe me, he says, we're going to be in government. I mean, he outlined it.
Well, they're doing everything they can to make it happen. And going back to a video we did a short time ago, I mean, the other aspect of all of this, we were talking about the legal case, this extraordinary, phony, bogus, ridiculous, silly legal case that's been brought against Boris Johnson. But I mean, there's now claims, you know, they now do this all the time. I mean, they've been bringing legal cases, as we discussed on that video, against all sorts of other people. The various donors to the Leave campaign are being subjected to relentless questioning and inquisitions about where they got their funding. This despite the fact that the Remain campaign during the 2016 referendum massively outspent the Leave campaign, and of course had the backing of the government and the official opposition and most of the media also. But I mean, the fact that, as I said, supporters of Leave are now being harassed, both through the courts and by the government bureaucracy, is a sign of how angry and desperate and fanatical these people have become.
It's all-out warfare to nullify the will of the people.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. Will they succeed?
Well, I think it's going to be touch and go. I mean, an awful lot depends on what happens within the Conservative Party, because it is the Conservative Party that is now the key. I mean, there are lots of people within the Conservative Party who understand that if Britain doesn't leave the EU on the 31st of October, the Conservative Party is toast. I mean, it will lose such support as it still has across England and Wales. And I think they are prepared to back a committed leaver, someone like Johnson or Raab, to become leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister in order to do that. But it depends, I think, ultimately on how far these Remainers are allowed to go. And I stress allowed to go, because the English Constitution is a very strange combination of different things. If a Prime Minister, let's say it's Boris Johnson, is committed to leaving on the 31st of October and is prepared to accept no deal as the price, constitutionally, there is very little that can be done. Even the idea of voting the government down in a vote of confidence may not be so easy, given that there are not that many parliamentary days before the 31st of October, and the Prime Minister is in theory in charge of the parliamentary timetable. Having said that, it would require the Prime Minister, let's call him Boris Johnson, to have nerves of steel. And Boris Johnson doesn't strike me as a kind of person who has nerves of steel. And of course, with our rogue speaker, Mr. Bercow, prepared to make up the rule book in order to do anything to stop Britain exiting the European Union, it's entirely possible that he could invent some entirely new procedure that the MPs could use in order to stop Brexit. And it would be of dubious legality, but, who knows? And he was expected to retire next month, but he's just announced that he's going to carry on.
Astonishing.
So it's touch and go. I mean, as I said, it depends a lot on the character of the next British Conservative leader and Prime Minister. It depends to some extent on Jeremy Corbyn holding the line, which, give credit to him, over the last few days he has done. He's not let himself be panicked into taking an outright anti-Brexit position by the Remain forces within his party. But, he's wobbled in the past. He might wobble again. And it also depends on the extent to which the Conservative Prime Minister is able to keep control of the parliamentary timetable. I mean, I wouldn't put money on this one.
Alexander, I want to get your final thoughts on what Trump recently said about Boris Johnson and about the Brexit Party. Trump came out and pretty much endorsed Johnson, called him very talented. He pretty much said he's the guy. He's going to be the new prime minister. And he also said that Farage should be included, or the Brexit Party should be included in the Brexit negotiations going forward. What do you make of that statement by Trump? This is really, globalists against, what Trump ushered in 2016, the nation state, the nationalist agenda, sovereignty, and all that stuff. I mean, we're seeing it coming to a head in the UK. Here it is. And Trump's going to be in the UK any day now. So absolutely. I mean, it's a straight battle, and Trump has set out very clearly which side he's on. Oh yeah. And he's also made it very, very clear that he expects people. I mean, he actually said this about Jeremy Corbyn also. He made some very interesting comments about Corbyn, that if Corbyn wants to become prime minister, he needs to keep in mind which side of the barricades he needs to be on these sort of battles. I am going to make a guess about Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has been talking to Nigel Farage. It's a guess. I don't know it for a fact, but the two men do know each other and do like each other. And I think Nigel Farage has told Trump that Boris Johnson is the most likely person who can actually deliver Brexit. And I think that's partly the reason why Donald Trump has endorsed him in the way that he has done. And I think we've also seen that Donald Trump is basically putting pressure on Johnson in return for that backing to actually include Farage in the negotiations. Farage has said that he wants to be party to any negotiations that take place with the European Union. And of course, the British political establishment has thrown up its hands in horror at that idea. Now, of course, Donald Trump isn't just anybody. He is the president of the United States. The United States carries immense influence in Britain. What I mean by that is I don't mean that it wins votes. I think, on the contrary, what Donald Trump says isn't going to win many votes for Boris Johnson. But it does carry weight with power brokers who matter. And just a few days ago, another prominent American, Mike Pompeo, was here, and he warned the British. And remember, the British have all kinds of things going on at the moment, which we'll touch on. He warned the British
that if they don't sever their links with Huawei, the entire intelligence cooperation between Britain and the United States will be put in jeopardy. Now, I don't think that just extends to Huawei. I think there's also the issue of British involvement in Russiagate, and I think there's also the question of the position that Britain takes with Brexit. So I think that the US, Donald Trump, to be precise, the Trump administration, is making it very, very clear to the British that he wants Britain out of the European Union. He wants Boris Johnson, Prime Minister. He wants Boris Johnson to bring Farage in, but he also wants Britain support on Huawei and also on Russiagate. And I think this is a complex agenda that he's playing, but he carries a very, very big stick, because if the United States withdraws intelligence cooperation with Britain, it's curtains for the kind of global role that the British intelligence community has been pretending to play. I mean, they rely overwhelmingly on US resources to do what they have been doing.
Yeah, so Trump has definitely taken sides. It shouldn't come as a surprise which side he has taken. Let's not forget that Obama, before Brexit, also took sides, and he came in favor of the globalists and the EU and the elitists. I mean, he urged UK citizens to vote to remain. So Obama showed what he wanted, and Obama and Trump is showing what he prefers. And let me read you a quote, and we'll wrap it up on this, Alexander, from the Sunday Times. Trump did an interview there, and here's what Trump said. He said that the UK has, quote, very little to lose in the Brexit-related negotiations. And I quote what he said to the Sunday Times. If I were them, I wouldn't pay $50 billion. That is me. I would not pay. That is a tremendous number. And he said if a deal can't be reached by October 31st, extended deadline, then the UK should simply walk away. And I quote, if they don't get what they want, I would walk away. If you don't get the deal you want, if you don't get a fair deal, then you walk away.
Yes, that's exactly right. But I also would add, and that's, of course, typical, classic Donald Trump. And it's classic Donald Trump in two senses, because, of course, he's also telling the British, he's reminding the British that if the British don't play along with him, he is somebody who's perfectly happy to walk away. He's perfectly happy to walk away, not just on Brexit, but also on Huawei, on intelligence cooperation, on Russiagate, on many things. So he is asking the British to pick sides. And I think Boris Johnson understands that. I think Conservative MPs who must choose who will be put to the membership. I mean, it has to be reduced to two people who are put to the membership for a vote, for the membership, the Conservative Party membership, to decide who the leader will be. We'll be taking very careful note of what Donald Trump says.
All right, and so will we. Absolutely.
And so will we. Can I just finish? Of course, You've got all sorts of people complaining angrily about how Donald Trump is interfering in British domestic politics, which of course he is. But as you correctly said, Barack Obama also did during the referendum. And it's very interesting to see the people who cheered Barack Obama's intervention now condemning Donald Trump's. So there we are. They've been well and truly trumped, and they have only themselves to blame for it.
There you go. Well said. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop. Pick up a t-shirt like the one I'm wearing, or you can pick up a really cool polo embroidered with our logo, like the one Alexander Mercouris is wearing. You can also pick up some really nice bugs that I think you have sitting on there.
I need to show you both. I've got two now, and I'm going to show you both. This is the first
Right.
one. This is the first one because of course I should explain to people that though we are not absolutely not a Russian-based company in any way, neither of us is based in Moscow. The Duran started in a meeting in Moscow, so we have an affection for the place because we met there, and so this mug has the Moscow coat of arms on it, with St. George and the dragon. St. George, of course, represents truth and courage, slaying the dragon of fake news, which is what the Duran is all about. And, of course, we've got the double-headed eagle, which embodies us. That is to say, we are a geopolitical website. We cover the entire world. We look both ways, east and west.
Anyone that's named George Alexander, if you know someone named George, that mug is a must.
Absolutely true. I mean, as I said, here we are. We've also got the double-headed eagle on the other mug. That's our badge, as it is beautifully embroidered here on this really exceptional, actually, 100% cotton polo shirt with this beautifully embroidered and very elegantly done Duran badge here. And can I just say, as I said, today it's been a steaming hot day in London, of the kind that we can get. You can get very humid here, very hot. And it's beautiful to wear in weather like this. It's also beautiful to wear in cooler weather. So it's stylish to wear, it looks good, and it feels good, and it's incredibly comfortable. And these mugs are both handsome and marvelous to drink from. And as I said, I drink tea from them. My wife drinks coffee, and before very long, I'm going to probably experiment drinking beer from one of them tonight.
All right. Guys, you can also donate to us on PayPal and Patreon as well. That also helps us out. The links are in the description box down below. And you can follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. And don't forget, you can get an ebook on the very subject that we're talking about today, which is Brexit. Everyone that's a Patreon member or Subscribe Star, we also have Subscribe Star now as well. Link is in the description box. We have that ebook on there. For everyone else, you can get that ebook for a cup of coffee, really, in London for $4.99, and it helps us out a lot, and hopefully it'll help us get more ebooks out to you as well. So, Alexander, you wrote a foreword to that ebook.
Indeed, I did. Can I just say? I mean, it's one of the most prescient subjects. We've been incredibly prescient on this, I think, Duran. We've written at length and spoken at length about Brexit ever since and before, actually, the 2016 referendum happened. And what is extraordinary to me is that way back in 2016, we were predicting that what the outcome of a failure to deliver Brexit would be, how there would be a huge political crisis in Britain, there would be a crisis of legitimacy, a crisis of the political class, and how a new political movement would appear that would sweep across England and Wales and challenge the established parties. And sure enough, that is exactly what has happened. It's been extraordinary to watch. It's been extraordinary to watch the contortions of the British political class as they struggle with all of this. And you will see in that book, both in the foreword that Alex is referring to, but also in the discussions that Alex and I have had, which are reproduced very carefully in that book, you will see how we chart the course of this thing and how, if I may say so, prescient and accurate we have been. So if you want to understand Brexit, again, I would recommend our book.
All right. And don't forget, guys, you can also go to our site, theduran.com, as well, and see all the articles that Alexander is looking up to. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.